Alright, so let's discuss respiration and functional anatomy of the respiratory tract based on the mind map. So we'll look at the various phases of respiration and distinguish between internal and external respiration. We'll look at respiratory and non-respiratory functions of the respiratory system, the functional anatomy of the respiratory system, including the tracheal bifurcation, the bronchopulmonary segments, and also I'll try and describe the structures and the functions of the conductive and respiratory zones um, based on the mind maps. Alright, so when you talk about respiration, physiologically, it has to do with the movement of oxygen from the outside environment to the cells or tissues, and the transport of carbon dioxide from the cells or tissues to the outside. But biochemically, it has to do with the breakdown of food to release energy in the form of ATP and NADPH, and also waste products. External respiration has to do with the transfer of oxygen from the atmosphere to the body and the removal of carbon dioxide from the body and the transport of gases by the blood to and from the cells too. But with the internal respiration, it has to do with the gaseous exchange of oxygen and carbon dioxide between the cells and the internal below. That's the internal environment of the multicellular organism. And still on the internal respiration, um, also deals with utilization of oxygen by cells, resulting in the release of energy and the production of carbon dioxide. With the functional events of respiration, it follows several steps: ventilation, gas exchange, gas transport. They're all different steps to and utilization of oxygen by the cells. So when you say ventilation, it has to do with the movement of air in and out of the lungs. And with gas exchange is the exchange of oxygen and carbon dioxide between the alveoli and pulmonary capillaries. So with alveoli being the lungs and pulmonary capillaries being the blood, and gas transport, this is the transport of gases in the blood, and with the utilization of oxygen by cells, that has to do with the internal cellular respiration, and oxygen is used in DNA synthesis. Alright, so with the first exchange, that's between the atmosphere and the lungs, and that's ventilation, movement of air in and out of the lungs. And then with the from exchange between the lungs to blood and blood to lungs, that is that has to do with the gas exchange. And then transport, where you have your pulmonary circulation, systemic circulation. That's where the gases are being moved within the blood. And the last has to do with the cellular respiration, where the exchange happens from the blood to the cells and cells to blood. Alright. So a quick recap on the functional events in respiration. There's pulmonary ventilation, oxygen gets into the respiratory system, it's been transported through the blood, it's diffused to the tissues and cells. Carbon dioxide diffuses out of the tissues and cells through blood to the lungs and is breathed out. Alright, so still on the respiratory functions of the respiratory system, the primary function is gas exchange, and by gas exchange, that is the exchange of oxygen and carbon dioxide between the environment and the blood. And the result is that there is a maintenance of the arterial partial pressure of oxygen, partial pressure of carbon dioxide, and pH within narrow limits. For example, the partial pressure of oxygen is between 80 to 100 millimeters mercury, and that is if breathing room air, and that of carbon dioxide is um, the partial pressure of carbon dioxide is 35 to 45 millimeters mercury. The pH of blood within the normal ranges from 7.35 to 7.45. So partial pressure of carbon dioxide like the 35 and the 45. That's something you could easily remember. But the millimeters of mercury for the partial pressures could also be calculated in kilopascal, and it's very simple. 1 millimeter mercury is equal to the value over 7.5, just divided by 7.5, and you get the actual value in kilopascals. But we basically use, and so many devices use the millimeters mercury, so we'll stick to that. Right, so that's the primary function of the respiratory system, the respiratory function of the respiratory system being the primary. With the secondary functions, it has to do with the regulation of the body pH, and also that's the acid base states. So when it comes to the regulation of the body pH, it's by changing the blood carbon dioxide levels. So you have to know the respiratory system responds to metabolic acidosis and that of alkalosis. So metabolic acidosis, bicarbonate, carbonic acid, carbon dioxide, increasing acidic levels. So there will be hyperventilation to decrease the levels of the carbon dioxide, thereby reducing the acidity of the blood. Well, for metabolic alkalosis, there will be hypoventilation, and that will help retain the carbon dioxide, but that could lead to hypoxemia, though it will bring the blood pH back to the normal levels. With the non-respiratory functions of the respiratory system, as well with the storage function, it serves as a reservoir of blood available for circulatory compensation, and the lungs contain about 12% of the total blood volume. The immune system functions to it helps in secretion of IgA and other immunoglobulins and antibodies by lung into the bronchial mucus, and also mucociliary escalator in the airways, and free alveolar macrophages as cells in the alveoli. Right, so still on the non-respiratory functions of the respiratory system, think of metabolic functions like inactivation of the biological substances, for example, bradykinin, some prostaglandins, E1, E2, F2 alpha, and also serotonin and norepinephrine. And only a small fraction of epinephrine is inactivated by the lungs, and other substances not significantly affected, not activated or even inactivated. And when they go through the pulmonary circulation, those ones include vasopressin, angiotensin 2, and some prostaglandins A1 and A2. It's still on the non-respiratory functions of the respiratory system, like the metabolic functions, leads to activation of biological substances. The lungs synthesize angiotensin converting enzyme that's needed in the RAS system, renin-angiotensin aldosterone system. So the ACE catalyze the conversion activation of angiotensin 1 into angiotensin 2, and angiotensin 2 is a potent vasoconstrictor, and the synthesis of biological substances are also some of the non-respiratory functions too, like arachidonic acid metabolites like leukotrienes and prostaglandins, phospholipids, and other like dipalmitoyl phosphatidylcholine, which is also a component of surfactants. Other respiratory functions include pulmonary circulation filters. So it filters circulating micro aggregates, and actually has to do with the filtration of particulate matter like clots from venous blood. And others include heat and water exchange, nose, that has to do with just organ of smell, and larynx, which enables speech, singing, vocalization, and also the respiratory pump aids in venous return. Right, so with the renin-angiotensin or the aldosterone system, let's do a quick recap. So renin is being produced by the kidneys, and then angiotensinogen from the liver is being converted to angiotensin 1 by renin, and then angiotensin 1 is being converted to angiotensin 2 by ACE, as angiotensin converting enzyme, which is produced from the lungs. And then angiotensin 2 does so many things, but it increases sympathetic activity, affects tubular sodium chloride reabsorption and potassium excretion, and also water retention, and also affects the adrenal gland, adrenal cortex, leading to increased aldosterone secretion, which in turn leads to water retention. And angiotensin 2 also affects the arteries, leading to arteriolar vasoconstriction, and thereby contributing to increased blood pressure. And also angiotensin 2 affects the posterior pituitary, increasing the secretion of ADH, antidiuretic hormone, and that also leads to reabsorption of water at the collecting duct, and all these leading to hypertension. So basically, water and sodium retention, effective circulating volume increases perfusion of the glomerular apparatus to increases, the cycle continues, and hypertension and all these other things happen. Alright, so a quick review on the embryology of lung development. We have several stages: the embryonic stage, the pseudoglandular stage, the canalicular stage, the circular stage, alveolar stage, and finally the postnatal stage. Is the final stage being the alveolar stage and the postnatal stage. So the embryonic stage, the lung part differentiation occurs, and the trachea and the bronchi to pulmonary vein, pulmonary artery are being formed. At the pseudoglandular phase, so the embryonic is from 4 to 7 weeks, and the pseudoglandular is from 7 to 17 weeks. The conducting airways, the terminal bronchioles, the immature neural networks, pre-inguinal blood vessels are being formed. The other canalicular stage, your primitive alveoli, type 2 pneumocytes or cells, type 2 cells. There's surfactant synthesis begin. All these are in utero, and that's the canalicular is from the 17 to 26 weeks. The circular is from 27 to 36 weeks, and at that point, you have your terminal bronchioles, and the alveolar saccus, extracellular matrix, neural network maturation all occurs at the circular stage. And at the alveolar stage, which is from that's at birth from 36 to 2 years. At that point, there's expansion of gas exchange areas, and nerve and capillaries. And there's continued cellular proliferation, lung growth, and expansion even up to 18 years. Alright, so quick review. So the pseudo glandular phase, the gestational age is usually from 5 to 16 weeks or 17 weeks, and that's where the major airways develop up to the terminal bronchiole, and the lung has glandular appearance. But at the canalicular stage, from 16 or 17 weeks to 26 weeks, the lung develops to respiratory bronchioles, cartilage, muscle, and blood vessels also form. And at the terminal sac or circular phase, that's from 24 weeks to um, birth or 36 weeks. There's development of the terminal sac, or that's a primitive alveoli, maturation of airway, and capillaries establish close contact to, and surfactant production starts at 24 weeks. With the alveolar stage, that's postnatally, there's development of the alveoli, alveolo-capillary contacts better, and also maturation of the airway. 90% of alveoli are formed postnatally. So at birth, each of the terminal bronchiole opens into a single alveolus instead of fully developed alveolar clustering, and the alveoli are thick-walled and constitute only 10% of the total alveoli in adults. Alveolar growth and multiplication actually continues until about 6 to 8 years. Right, now let's look at nasal and oral breathing. So they are just alternate breathing outlets, as with the nose and the mouth. And nasal breathing is more physiological, and its advantages include filtering or filtration of particulate matter by the riboside hairs. There is better humidification of inspired gas, as the nasal septum and the turbinates greatly increase the surface area of mucus available for evaporation, and nasal pathway produce turbulent flow with increasing contacts between the mucosa and the air. And the clinical correlations, there could be problems with endotracheal intubation. Or with endotracheal intubation, the tube goes directly into the trachea, but then if it descends further on, it could go into the right major bronchus, because it's far more wider, larger, and vertically inclined compared to the left main bronchus. Right, but the disadvantages of nasal breathing is that there's increased resistance in air flow, and more likely to be obstructed by polyps, adenoids, or congestion of the nasal mucosa. And due to this, an application I can think of is oral breathing, and that will be obligatory in patients with increased nasal resistance to airflow, especially in children and some adults. And could be a combination of both the oral and the nasal breathing. So at high minutes ventilation, typically above 35 liters per minute, that is during intense exercise, both the oral and nasal airways may be used. But in children up to 8 years, due to their narrow airways, there's an increased airway resistance, and the nasal resistance represents about 50% of total respiratory resistance in children. And children with nasal congestion have worsened airway resistance problems, especially those who have obligate nasal breathers. in those who are obligate nasal breathers. With the respiratory tract, um, the respiratory tract, like we talked about, the nasal cavity, the pharynx, larynx, trachea, bronchial, bronchioles, alveolar sacs. There are other components of the respiratory tract that we'll look at. So the upper respiratory tract ends at the level of the larynx, the nasal cavity, the um, nasopharynx, the oropharynx, laryngopharynx, and the larynx. Yeah, so that's a division of the upper division, the proximal to the larynx, and the lower is from the um, below the larynx to the lungs. So from the trachea to the lungs, that's the bell distal to the larynx, and the airways consist of the trachea, bronchi, and bronchioles. And with the respiratory tract, there are several segments of it, about 23 segments. So from the Z to 0, that's where you have your trachea. The conducting zone is from 0 to 16, or generation 16, or segment 16. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to 16. 0 is trachea, 1 is the bronchi. And from 4, generation 4, you have your bronchioles. And from generation 5 to 16, you have your terminal bronchioles. From 17 to 23, that's where you have your transitional and respiratory zones. From 17 to 19 is the respiratory bronchioles. And then from 20 to 22, the alveolar ducts, and 23 is alveolar sacs. And with the number of branches, the number of tube in branches, there's only one in the trachea. As we are dealing with the conducting zone from the trachea to the terminal bronchioles. We have just 2 for the bronchi, 4, 6, 16 for the bronchioles, and 32. Now from the terminal bronchioles, about 6 times 10 raised to the power 4. When we get to the respiratory zone, the respiratory bronchioles about 5 times 10 to the power 5, and from the alveolar duct to the alveolar sacs will be around 8 times 10 raised to the power 6. So the subdivision of the lower respiratory tract includes the conducting zone, like I said, the trachea to terminal bronchioles, and the anatomical dead space is about 2 mils per kilogram in adults. And the main function of the conducting zone is for conduction and humidification, and is derived they derive their nutrition from the bronchial circulation. The transition zone, the respiratory bronchioles and the alveolar ducts, there's gradual increase in the number of alveoli in the wall, and the respiratory zone, the alveoli and the alveolar sac constitute the respiratory zone. It's about 2.5 liters in that of an average adult, and they derive their nutrition from the pulmonary circulation. The composition of the walls of the airway, the walls of the primary, secondary, and tertiary bronchi contain progressively less cartilage and progressively more smooth muscle. And the walls of the bronchioles have no cartilage, but it just consists mainly of smooth muscle. And its application, well, the large airways, the trachea and the bronchi, are kept open mainly by the ring of cartilage, and the small airways, the bronchioles and alveolar ducts, rely on transpulmonary pressure to keep them open. And transpulmonary pressure is the same mechanism that keeps alveoli open, and bronchiolar diameter is under autonomic control. So with the left and right bronchi, the trachea bifurcates into the right and left bronchi at the level of T5, and the main bronchi are separated by an internal ridge, which, like I said, is called the carina. And the main bronchus is shorter, wider, and more vertically placed than the left. Yeah, which is short. So shorter because it gives off its upper lobe bronchus sooner. That's after a course of only 2.5 cm, and it's wider because it supplies a larger lung. And the right has three lobes. It's more vertically placed at 20 to 25 degrees to the vertical compared to 40 to 45 degrees on the left, because the left bronchus has to extend laterally behind the aortic arch to reach the lungs hilum. Alright, so the right main bronchus is vertical, is more vertical. It descends at a steeper angle of 25 degrees at the carina, and the left main bronchus is less vertical at 45 degrees. The inhaled foreign bodies or bronchial aspirates are more likely to enter the right bronchus and the right lung, and the right lung aspiration is commoner than the left. Like I said, right endobronchial intubation is commoner than the left. So with the bronchopulmonary segments, let's use the 19 segment model. The right has 3 lobes and it has 10 bronchopulmonary segments. The left has 9 bronchopulmonary segments. So the upper lobe has 3. For the right lung has 3 bronchopulmonary segments. Middle has 2, and the lower lobe has 5 bronchopulmonary segments, making it 10. With the left lung, the upper lobe has 5, and then the lower lobe has 4 bronchopulmonary segments. Right, so the bronchopulmonary segment, the right, like I said, the upper lobe has 3. So the apical, posterior, and anterior, and the middle lobe has 2, which is the lateral and the medial bronchopulmonary segments, and the lower lobe has 5: the lateral basal, the anterior basal, posterior basal, medial basal, and apical bronchopulmonary segments. Or the lower lobe has just 4, like I said. So there's the lateral basal, posterior basal, anterior basal, and apical basal. But the upper left lobe has 5. So it has the upper and the lingular portions being the apical bronchopulmonary segment, posterior, anterior, superior, and inferior. So the bronchopulmonary segment is the topological and functional unit of the lung. And like I said, the right has 10 segments. It makes about 55% of lung volume. And the left has 9 segments, which makes up 45% of lung volume. And each bronchopulmonary segment has its own bronchus, that is segmental tertiary bronchus, and its own supply from the pulmonary artery, with its parenchyma distinct from adjacent segments. The lung resection, surgery, postural drainage, and chest radiodiagnosis are largely based on the detailed anatomy of these segments. So you should be able to predict the pulmonary functional reserves after pneumonectomy or lobectomy. Alright. So let's take this example. Let's say a patient with a pre-op FEV1 of about 63%, scheduled to undergo a left pneumonectomy. So a PPO minus the FEV1 will be equal to pre-op FEV1 times um, a whole equation, which is 1 minus the bronchopulmonary segments removed over the total. So with the PPO FEV1 will be equal to 3% times 1 minus 9 over 19. Remember the left has 9 bronchopulmonary segments and the right has 10. So 9 over 19, and you get 33.2%. Right, so the pulmonary veins relation to the lung tissue, you realize that the pulmonary veins are connected directly to the pulmonary tissues by connective tissues, and the lung volume is directly linked, and that determines the diameter of the pulmonary veins. And this mechanism promotes venous return. With the alveolar ducts and alveolar sacs, the respiratory zones are very, very important. And when it comes to the blood gas barrier, is when there is gaseous exchange, oxygen moving from the alveolus to the pulmonary capillary to systemic circulation, and venous blood, carbon dioxide moving from the pulmonary capillary to the alveolus and through the conducting airway to the lungs. Right, so the key layers separating the air from blood in the lungs, we have the alveolus interstitial space and the capillary with alveolus. The parts closer to the interstitial or in direct contact with the interstitial space closer to the capillary is the epithelial basement membrane, and from there we have the alveolar epithelium and the fluid and surfactant layer. But the capillary layer, you have the capillary basement membrane also in direct contact with the interstitial space, and the capillary endothelium too. You have your red blood cells, oxygen moving in and out. So over there, the alveolar epithelium contains the type 1 and type 2 pneumocytes, the alveolar basement membrane, interstitial space, capillary basement membrane, and capillary endothelium. The type 2, type 1 has the large surface area, and the type 2 are very, very numerous. They are the surfactant secreting cells too. And type 1 just increases the surface area, and this calls for gaseous exchange. Alveolar macrophages ingest the foreign materials that reaches the alveoli. Alright, so that's it about the blood gas barrier and the other concepts. Okay, so the total surface area in an adult is about 100 meters square. The thickness of the blood gas barrier is about 0.5 micrometer. And the features of the blood gas barrier for gaseous exchange, it has a large surface area, no type 1, type 2 is surfactant secreting, and small diffusion distance, thin, which is very, very thin. It has a very thin wall, and the gaseous exchange from carbon dioxide, oxygen and carbon dioxide, is they are lipid soluble. Okay, so a quick review: the type 1 pneumocytes or the membranous pneumocytes, they have the simple squamous epithelial cells. And for gaseous exchange, they have a large surface area and they make up about 90 to 95% of the alveolar surface area. They are very thin. They have presence of occluding junctions that prevent the leakage of tissue fluid into the alveolar airspace, and they are unable to replicate. So when damaged, the type 2 cells may proliferate and differentiate into type 1 cells. The type 2 are more numerous than the type 1. Type 2 about 30% more than type 1. Or the type 2 pneumocytes are secreting or secretory cells, and their functions are to synthesize, secrete, and store surfactants. And they reduce alveolar surface tension. They function as stem cells of alveolar surface during injury, and so repair of alveolar epithelium after destruction of the type 1 pneumocytes. They retain the ability to differentiate into type 1 alveolar cells if there's an injury to the lung, and this typically takes about 5 days, right? So many things that we can talk about the role of the Clara cells or the PLAB or C cells, and the role of surfactants, role in surfactant synthesis, and also with collateral ventilation in lungs, where it has to do with the pulse of Kohn, which joins the alveoli together. And so, and the canal of Lambert too comes in bronchial and bronchiolar pathways too are also there, bronchoalveolar and also interalveolar pathways too, which serves as collateral ventilation in the lungs. But the pores of Kohn goes between alveoli and facilitates the collateral ventilation in case of bronchial obstruction. And also, like I said, the bronchoalveolar connections too. Alright, so we'll end here, continue with the mechanisms of breathing later.